The colony sat on the edge of human space, a fragile outpost barely clinging to survival on a desolate world. A speck of human presence in a sea of uncharted star systems, it was Earth's weakest link. Years ago, settlers arrived with hopes of mining rare minerals, but isolation and lack of support left them vulnerable. The buildings were patched together from old Earth surplus, the infrastructure brittle and unreliable. The settlement's defenses were minimal, obsolete turrets, scavenged sensor arrays, and a handful of poorly trained security personnel. The colony relied on supply ships from Earth, but delays stretched months. Morale was low, resources stretched thin. Communication with Earth was slow, unreliable, and often static-filled. Orders came late, supplies later. The colony's leaders knew they were a backwater, ignored by the larger military fleets focused on richer, more strategic worlds. The colonists lived with a constant undercurrent of unease, aware they were exposed, alone, and without backup. They were far from home, the galaxy's forgotten outpost. The commander of the colony, a hardened but pragmatic man, walked the perimeter once again, eyes scanning the barren horizon. The wind carried dust and static. No alien life, no friendly ships in sight. Just the empty sky and the faint hum of failing generators. Reports from the sensor techs showed no signs of approaching ships, but the commander couldn't shake the feeling something was coming. Inside the cramped command center, officers gathered around flickering displays, faces tense with worry. Data from the long-range scanners showed a blip, small, distant, moving fast toward the colony. It wasn't typical trade or exploration craft. The colony's intelligence officer speculated it was a hostile fleet, a known marauder group recently reported near the edge of mapped space. The colony's few combat drones were no match for any serious military force. There was no time for panic. Orders went out to raise alert levels. Civilian populations were instructed to prepare for emergency protocols. Seek shelter, lock down sensitive areas, secure data archive. The defense teams scrambled to man their stations, double-checking aging weapons and power supplies. But deep down, everyone knew this was a fight they were not equipped to win. Colonists moved with tense urgency, families packing what little they could carry, workers rushing to secure vital machinery, medics preparing triage centers. The settlement's only shield generator was outdated and could barely hold against a prolonged assault. The communication officer tried repeatedly to reach Earth Command for reinforcements or orders but received only silence or garbled transmissions. The colony was on its own. Outside, the horizon darkened. Sensors picked up multiple signatures converging on the settlement. The attackers arrived faster than anticipated, ships slicing through space with deadly precision. Moments later, warnings blared through the colony's public address system, urging immediate lockdown. Inside the command center, tension was palpable. Officers exchanged grim looks. The colony had no fleet, no artillery capable of fending off this force. The defenders' only hope lay in holding out long enough for help to arrive, a hope quickly fading. Minutes passed as ships emerged from warp, their silhouettes grim against the darkening sky. Attack patterns began, precision strikes aimed at disabling communications, power grids, and defensive turret. The colony's alarms screamed through the air as buildings shook from bombardment. Despite the chaos, small groups of defenders manned their stations, firing back with everything they had. The limited weaponry, mostly old rifles and a handful of mounted lasers, fared poorly against the attackers' advanced technology. Explosions lit the sky, sending plumes of smoke rising from critical infrastructure. On the ground, panic spread quickly. Civilians ran for shelter, stumbling over debris as the colony shook with successive blasts. The emergency sirens wavered under the strain, creating an eerie cacophony. The commander barked orders, trying to coordinate a defensive response, but communication lines cracked and died. Sensors flickered, screens went dark. The last functional communications relay was hit. Isolation deepened. In the midst of destruction, stories of quiet courage emerged. A small engineering team rushed to repair a vital power junction, knowing it could keep life support running a few minutes longer. Medics moved tirelessly through makeshift triage centers, stabilizing the wounded under constant threat. But the tide was relentless. The attackers advanced swiftly, exploiting the colony's weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. They targeted command centers first, crippling leadership. Defensive turrets were taken out within moments. The settlement's defenses collapsed like a house of cards. With systems failing, the colony's inhabitants faced the terrifying reality: escape was impossible. Evacuation vehicles were destroyed or trapped. The few armored transports couldn't break through enemy lines. The commander ordered the evacuation protocols abandoned to avoid futile losses. As the attack reached its peak, the settlement's physical and psychological defenses crumbled. Silence began to fall where once there was life and hope. Yet, beneath the destruction, a spark remained. Survivors huddled in underground shelters, systems barely operational. Data cores flickered with recordings of the assault, logs, messages, and desperate pleas to Earth. The attackers withdrew after only 7 minutes, having achieved their goal with brutal efficiency. The colony lay in ruins, a testament to human fragility in the vastness of space. But in the shadows, a faint pulse of resistance stirred. The weakest colony had been shattered, but not broken. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity, even at its most vulnerable, harbored a resilience no enemy could extinguish. The assault began without warning. The colony's perimeter defenses, already outdated and underpowered, were overwhelmed almost instantly. Explosions ripped through the fragile walls, tearing metal and stone apart with devastating force. The enemy moved with cold precision, targeting every sensor, turret, and power node in a calculated sequence designed to cripple before the defenders could react. The alarms blared, but their urgency felt hollow in the face of such overwhelming firepower. The attackers deployed rapid-fire energy weapons, cutting through buildings and vehicles as if they were paper. Automated drones swarmed, sweeping the outer perimeter with deadly efficiency. There was no mercy, no hesitation. Commanders shouted orders to hold positions, but the defenders were already outmatched. The few mounted laser turrets spat futile bursts against ships armed with shields that shimmered and absorbed damage almost instantly. Infantry armed with rifles found themselves exposed, vulnerable to pulse weapons that rendered their armor useless. Inside the colony, the chaos was absolute. Walls shook, ceilings collapsed, and fires spread quickly through the aging structures. Civilians screamed and ran blindly, seeking shelter as the ground trembled beneath their feet. Power failures plunged sections into darkness, and backup generators groaned under the strain. Communications jammed, leaving units isolated and blind. A small team of engineers worked frantically to restore power to a critical communications hub. Sparks flew as they replaced damaged circuits, sweat streaming down faces marked by fear and determination. Every second counted. Without that link, coordinating any defense was impossible. They were interrupted by a sudden blast that sent debris flying. One of them fell silent, but the others pressed on. In another sector, medics scrambled to tend to the wounded amid smoke and rubble. They carried the injured on makeshift stretchers, navigating narrow corridors now blocked by wreckage. Supplies were limited and triage decisions brutal. Every patient was precious, yet many were beyond saving. The medics' faces were grim, marked by exhaustion and despair. Outside, the enemy pressed forward relentlessly. Dropships deployed additional forces directly into the colony's core. These ground troops, heavily armed and protected by advanced armor, moved systematically, clearing out defenders and securing vital infrastructure. Resistance crumbled in the face of superior firepower and tactic. The defenders' attempts to mount counterattacks were sporadic and desperate. Small squads launched ambushes, trying to slow the enemy advance. They used the environment, collapsed buildings, narrow alleys, to their advantage, striking swiftly then melting away. Each success was short-lived. The attackers adapted quickly, deploying sensors and aerial drones that tracked every movement. Command centers became targets for precision strike. Missiles tore through walls, silencing vital control rooms. With leadership cut off, many defenders were left directionless. Chaos spread like wildfire, units fracturing into isolated pockets. Communication breakdowns sealed their fate. The colony's sole shield generator sputtered under repeated assault. Its energy fluctuated wildly, flickering on and off as technicians struggled to keep it online. Each failure exposed the settlement to barrages of energy blasts that tore into structures and personnel. Eventually, the shield collapsed entirely. Attempts to call for reinforcements failed. The attackers deployed powerful electronic warfare systems that jammed outgoing signals and corrupted incoming data. Earth and Allied forces were left unaware of the colony's fate until the attack concluded. Amid the carnage, individuals made standout sacrifices. A security team volunteered to hold a collapsed corridor, buying precious minutes for civilians to evacuate. They fought until ammunition ran dry, then engaged in close-quarters combat. Few survived. Another group worked to protect the data vaults, risking death to secure vital research and communication record. Their efforts ensured that not all was lost, preserving knowledge that could prove crucial in the future. The vaults were eventually breached, but only after significant delay. The attackers' strategy was clear: swift, overwhelming, and surgical. They aimed to incapacitate the colony in minutes, not hours. Their ships emitted bursts of energy that disabled electronic systems without destroying infrastructure unnecessarily. They collected intelligence, assessed weaknesses, and adjusted their tactics on the fly. Within 7 minutes, the colony's defenses were shattered, its command structure destroyed, and its population decimated or captured. The attackers withdrew as quickly as they came, leaving behind a smoldering ruin. The silence that followed was eerie. Fires burned unchecked, the air thick with smoke and ash. The few survivors emerged cautiously from shelters, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The colony was broken, its fate sealed in a brutal blink. Yet, in the wreckage, recordings and logs were recovered. They detailed the attack's speed, precision, and scope. The attackers' motives appeared strategic: eliminating a foothold, sending a warning, and securing resources with minimal effort. It was a clear message. Human presence on the frontier was vulnerable. Despite the devastation, the story did not end in despair. Scattered survivors began gathering, nursing wounds and sharing information. The attack's brevity had spared enough lives to kindle hope. They began assessing damage, salvaging supplies, and planning their next step. The colony's fall was a harsh lesson. It revealed the limits of outdated defenses and the price of isolation. But it also exposed the attackers' vulnerabilities: overconfidence, reliance on technology, and the assumption that destruction equated to total victory. Humanity's weakest colony had been conquered in 7 minutes. But beneath the ruin, a resolve was forming, a determination to rise, rebuild, and fight back. Survivors emerged from the shadows, battered but unbroken. The colony was reduced to ashes, yet pockets of life persisted beneath the rubble. These fragments of humanity clung to hope, their will to survive stronger than the ruins surrounding them. Communication with Earth remained impossible, but they refused to surrender to silence. In underground shelters and forgotten tunnels, small groups gathered. They shared stories of loss, pain, and fleeting glimpses of courage during the assault. The initial shock gave way to resolve. Leaders stepped forward, not by rank but by action. Their faces were hidden in darkness, but their voices carried authority and calm. They organized survivors, rationed dwindling supplies, and set priorities: safety, recovery, and resistance. Engineering crews scavenged the wreckage, salvaging what they could. Broken machines, damaged circuits, raw materials, anything to sustain life and rebuild defenses. They worked tirelessly to restore power, purify water, and repair communication arrays. Every success, however small, lifted spirit. The colony's infrastructure was fragile, but human ingenuity proved more resilient. Medical teams improvised field hospitals. With limited supplies, they performed triage and emergency surgeries in cramped spaces. The wounded were many, and care was a race against time and infection. Yet, compassion endured. The medics became pillars of hope, their dedication inspiring those around them to hold fast. During salvage missions, survivors uncovered hidden technology, an advanced AI system buried beneath the colony. Designed as an emergency backup by Earth's engineers, it was dormant but intact. Initial scans revealed potential for defense and communication restoration. The AI promised to be a force multiplier, a spark to ignite resistance. Activating the AI required technical expertise. A small team of scientists and engineers volunteered, venturing into hazardous areas to reach the mainframe. The atmosphere was tense, but their determination unshaken. After hours of work, the AI came online, its systems humming with dormant power. The AI's first task was to re-establish communication with Earth. Its advanced algorithms bypassed enemy jamming signals and found weak but stable relay frequencies. Messages were sent, urgent pleas for reinforcements, status reports, and intelligence on the attackers' technology and tactics. While waiting for a response, the survivors prepared for the next phase. The AI provided detailed analysis of the attackers' weaknesses, gaps in shield coverage, weapon cooldown cycles, and vulnerabilities in ground troop armor. Armed with this knowledge, the survivors crafted a plan to disrupt and harass the occupying force. Small, mobile strike teams were formed. These units operated in the shadows, launching guerrilla attacks on supply lines, communications hubs, and isolated enemy patrols. Their weapons were scavenged and improvised, but their tactics were swift and brutal. Each success was a blow to enemy morale and a beacon to other human colonies still holding out. The attackers, confident in their swift victory, were caught off guard by the unexpected resistance. Their forces were stretched thin, forced to divert resources to security and counterinsurgency. Survivors exploited every weakness, striking quickly and disappearing before retaliation. Psychological resilience grew alongside physical resistance. Survivors shared stories, rekindling a sense of community and purpose. They crafted symbols of defiance, graffiti, messages, and coded signals to remind themselves and others that humanity would not yield. Earth Command finally responded. A distant fleet was dispatched, informed by the AI's data and survivor report. Relief was still days away, but the knowledge that help was coming fueled determination. The survivors prepared to hold out, to buy time and inflict damage. Plans for coordinated strikes took shape. The AI synchronized movements, distributing intelligence in real time. Every action was calculated, efficient, and designed to maximize impact. The humans, though outnumbered and outgunned, leveraged their adaptability and sheer willpower. Resistance fighters began sabotaging enemy equipment, energy weapons, communications arrays, and transport ships. They captured weapons and technology, turning the occupiers' tools against them. Each victory chipped away at the illusion of invincibility. The AI also analyzed potential allies. Nearby colonies, isolated but still operational, received encrypted messages encouraging coordinated efforts. The resistance was becoming a network, a web of defiance spreading across human outposts. Amid these struggles, the survivors never forgot their fallen. Memorials were created in hidden places, a testament to sacrifice and the cost of survival. These acts of remembrance strengthened bonds, reminding everyone why the fight was necessary. The colony, once deemed the weakest, had transformed into a beacon of resistance. Its story was no longer one of defeat but of resurgence. The attackers' swift victory had underestimated the core of humanity, the unyielding spirit to fight back against impossible odds. Plans extended beyond defense. Survivors began envisioning retaking their home, pushing the invaders out. With AI guidance, reinforcements on the way, and a growing resistance network, the tides of war began to shift. In the darkest hours, humanity found light. The colony's ashes nurtured seeds of rebellion, determination, and hope. The galaxy would soon learn that even the weakest colony could spark a fire that no enemy could extinguish.